So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Disney Princess. So let's start the series. Nariana unobtrusively sneaks around the scaffold, limiting her gem blue eyes on the fog covering the region to attempt to see where she is going. Meanwhile, with a chill gradually saturating her body from the chakra covering the fog encircling herself as well as her partners, at long last entered a kind of quiet zone, where the fog had less up to some degree. A temperamental yet feeling better breath gradually gets away from her lungs as the weighty squeezing chakra binding the fog reduce a piece too, permitting her to recognize Sakura remaining at the mouth of the extension, remaining before elderly person Tazuna with a kunai close by, shaking knees and tears filling her jade green eyes. Tazuna's old weather conditions dim eyes float around the area as he sees the collections of his laborers laying on the scaffold before himself as well as the crying young lady. However, lets out a moan of alleviation not seeing any blood or wounds. Say thanks to Kami, they are as yet alive. He thought, then at that point, he sees brilliant and dark red locks looking out from one of the openings on the right of the extension before Nariana's look meets Tazuna's own look. He planned to say something, yet Nariana shook her head with arguing precious stone blue eyes, preventing him from opening his mouth and parting with her area. He rapidly stops himself to her help and winks at him to console him. It will be okay now that she is here, with one final unpredictable look towards Tazuna, and a still terrified Sakura who didn't see her by any means. Nariana moved once more into the fog. I simply trust I'll be sufficient. She intellectually lets herself know since she realized she will be going toward a genuinely prepared shinobi perhaps too, and even though she showed herself a few different battling styles as well as jutsus better than what her master showed her, which was barely anything beside collaboration, making him basically useless to the delicate as glass group, she feels somewhat uncertain about her prosperity. However, that won't prevent her from attempting, yet again in the interim profound inside her brain. Red eyes gradually open, paying attention to her fighting inward contemplations. You won't ever arrive at your maximum capacity like this. Those monkeys won't ever permit you. Their trepidation will keep that tight hang on your rope, child. With that idea, the dark red eyes close, back with Nariana, she gradually drops further down the scaffold, searching for somewhere to creep over the side of the extension. Yet freezes at seeing a vault made of translucent ice mirrors. Squinting her eyes, she spots something human peering inside the arch, two human-looking figures with one that seems to be drifting simply before the first. Unexpectedly, cries and shouts are heard coming from the inside, shouts of fury and torment that could emerge out of her only male colleague and greatest team on Earth. To her, at any rate, enough with your underhanded moves. Come battle me, no doubt. Sasuke murmurs out as his eyes glimmer on and off from his regular debris dark to red and back, obscure to him. His Sharingan is gradually attempting to gleam to life, however is attempting to completely awaken. The concealed individual in the mirror halted her attack and stood just before the Uchiha. How could I believe she'd do that? This is a death for me, not a fair duel until the very end. A delicate feminine voice questions him, however she would truly not like to kill him. The mission should precede anything more, her own inclination included, for it is the method of the shinobi. Gritting his teeth, Sasuke took out a few kunais and tossed them at the mirror before him. Yet they just skipped off the ice reflect without making a scratch. Jerk! He snarls out while moving his eyes around, attempting to find an exit from his shoddy jail for an essential retreat. Better believe it, right? More prefer to take off from an exercise in futility like a defeatist. That is the means by which any other person would see it. He freezes for only a subsequent when he spots Nariana crawling towards the vault. A dim, nauseating grin gradually develops across his lips as he gets somewhere off to the side. One more shower of ice sundons pouring downward on him again. With a speedy hand sign, an unconscious Nariana is standing now in the focal point of the destruction in Sasuke's place. not realizing what had simply occurred. "You have at long last made yourself valuable to me, Dobe," Sasuke calls from the other side of the ice reflect vault with a dim laugh getting away from his lips. Shouts of desolation fill the quiet fog, making Kakashi freeze as he hears the female shout coming from surrounding him. His blended matched eyes look across his environmental elements, attempting to find its source. With a fast look he sees Sakura actually shudder. Securing their client, then his eyes land on a sadically smiling Sasuke as he keeps his look on the ice reflect destruction that he whenever had been captured in. Lastly, his eyes broadened with frightfulness at the acknowledgement that this shout might have just come from one individual. "It seems my device has dealt with one of your small kids playing shinobi, and that your little phony Uchiha has quite recently satisfied that group's unbelievable name," Zabuza tells him with a grunt. Kakashi's eyes snapped back towards the man. "What are you referring to?" he requests as his stomach curved, needing to purge all that he had eaten as of now. "Gracious Kami, I think I've messed up. Awful," Kakashi mentally cries to himself. "You are from similar town as those double-crossers, would you say you are not? You probably caught wind of their double-crossing history with one of its pioneers, Madara, or the second most famous trickster right up to the present day, Itachi." Zabuza questions him with a laugh and shakes his head at the silly man remaining before him. There are numerous others in that tribe who are known as colleague executioners, assuming they see whoever they are collaborated with as more fragile than themselves. Then, at that point, they will kill them or have the foe kill them and guarantee they had been killed in real life. He tells him with a scoff under his rapt face. Kakashi's eyes broadened with frightfulness at realizing this little snippet of data. Many had questions on the off chance that they could believe that family obviously. However, never in his most extravagant fantasies might he at any point accept that they could go up to this point. Back at the mirror arch, Haku freezes inside her mirror as her eyes look down with sickening apprehension. The blameless young lady who is adored by the sun and moon lays before her covered with her weapons of decision, those having been tipped with poison implied for the Uchiha rascal, yet presently flows through the unfortunate young lady's veins and takes steps to kill her at whatever second. A frozen tear tumbles from the concealed young lady's right cheek as she watches the blood pool under the young lady's body. Hairline breaks gradually start to show up on the mirrors, Haku's wrecked heart being reflected in her Kekai Genkai. In the meantime, Sasuke scoffs at seeing the nitwit laying on the ground, draining out before him. "At last, I will never again need to manage junk like you," he lets out as he raises his head higher with chuckling. Hearing his giggling, Haku gradually turns her head to where the Uchiha charlatan stands. Her Kiri and Byu cover gradually starts to break with the ice, gradually breaking into two. Her cinnamon earthy colored eyes have lost the remainder of the expectation honest people she actually had avoided that Zabuza couldn't prepare with regard to her. Presently a genuine shinobi without any concerns or laments for killing, she drops the few little glass tubes that held the toxin course through the fair kunoichi onto the scaffold. The glass breaks upon influence with the ground and its contents started to ascend in the air while gradually freezing into harmful ice senbons, obscure to everybody. A lady with caramel skin with long dark wavy hair maneuvered once again into a braid with greenish blue eyes, showed up under the extension in a whirl of water, remaining on the water's surface with a few enormous snakes curling around her body as they gradually swam around her. The clearly barbaric female has been joyfully dealing with her valuable snakes at the boundary among wave and bog. When she hears a tragic shout of agony coming from some place in the waves, frightened and stressed, she shut her eyes to attempt to figure out the wellspring of the blood-souring shout, and magically transported there when she tracked down it. When she showed up, Haku's ice tear fell upon her face alongside a solitary drop of Nariana's blood, both fluid telling her a short however difficult story of the two's aggravation. Yet who or what is the reason for those two unfortunate young ladies' aggravation? She thought with her very own tear shedding for them. Her snakes, detecting the desires of their courtesan, uncoiled from her body and immediately swam towards the backings of the scaffold, crawling around it and climbing towards the extension to see what had occurred and what had their escort anxious, delicate, sparkling yellowish eyes watch from the side of the extension, mirroring their courtesan's own as she watched everything from their eyes, and saw seeing a kid with short dark hair and chuckling like an insane person with a look of triumph as he watched a young lady caught inside a vault of ice, her body severely harmed and spasming from the toxic substance coursing through her body as blood came rambling out of her mouth and eyes. Then they notice another young lady weeping for the young lady while drifting over her inside some bizarre mirror. Mommy Wada's eternal heart freezes briefly at feeling a dim quality that is not the chuckling kid's own, found profound inside the unadulterated enduring soul, squirming upon the ground, a natural emanation that constrained the Loa to leak inside the youngster's body to research. Profound inside Nariana, trickling water could be heard from a good ways, which woke Nariana from her sleep, gradually. Her eyes shuddered open as an excruciating heave got away from her lips, and after a second to recapture her orientation, she moved with a touch of trouble, propelled herself up and glanced around. "Where in the world am I?" she inquiries without holding back, attempting to sort out what in blazes is happening around her. Dim laughing with a thunder unexpectedly fell the air, shaking the walls and water around her. Slight trepidation spikes through her body as she gradually propels herself dependent upon her feet. "Hi! Is there somebody here?" she hollered out, however got no reaction. She attempted once more. Yet again nobody replied, just heard the laughing once more. All things considered, whoever it is and whatever is going on, I surmise I'll just find my solution by following the laughs. Hopefully whoever is on the opposite side won't attempt to kill me. She tells nobody yet herself prior to starting to stroll forward, a couple of moments later, toward the finish of the dim passages. The blondie arrived at what seemed to be a room brimming with water and broken walls, with a monster set of jail bars before her, where a couple of red eyes seemed to view her, terrified from the get-go. She intended to pivot and take off. However, at that point a mouth loaded with sharp teeth showed up under the eyes and a voice repeated, "Stand by, little princess, don't as yet go," it said with the slightest hint of asking. At the words, Nariana halted and constrained herself to head back and face the beast, shudder at the sight before her. Who are you?" She questions it with a slight shake in her voice. "I'm the QB, the extraordinary evil spirit fox that went after your town a long time back and was strongly fixed inside you by your own dad," QB told her with a priggish grin. "QB," Nariana said with dread, binding her voice, said voice sounding unfamiliar even to her own ears as she gradually made a stride back. My F.A. However, before she might complete her sentence, a lady showed up, emerging from the water like Haku had emerged from her ice mirrors, remaining between the young lady and the fox. "Hi, my youngster." Mommy Wada welcomed the young lady with a miserable, shocking grin all over. Who are you?" Nariana stammers out with tears overflowing at the sides of her eyes. "I'm..." Mommy Wada started, yet couldn't complete her sentence, so disheartened by the youngster's tears. "Mommy Wada, what are you doing out of the place that is known for swamp?" QB requests/questions the goddess remaining before him. Her greenish-blue eyes then, at that point, solidify and move towards the gigantic fox being kept locked down inside the young lady, making it jump back at the frosty look of the goddess. I felt the tragic shouts of an unadulterated soul, of a sold-out one too many kids times and has experienced the last stroke, and you nine tails has never really safeguarded her or soothed her aggravation. She blames him, her snakes swimming around her in the pool of water she remains in, and afterward raising their heads to the fox to murmur furiously at him. Kyubi dismisses his look with an irritated fit. "The young lady's enduring was not my concern," he said with a combination of hate and lack of interest binding his voice, making the Loas look solidify considerably more. "Make sense of, for me, what difference would it make? She is your host. What befalls her will accidentally influence you, particularly on the off chance that she bites the dust." Mami Wada requests of him, indignantly confounded at the fox's lack of interest to in any event. His own endurance. Red eyes go to meet with blue-green eyes. "Since I'm burnt out on everything, Mommy, nearly since the day we were conceived, we followed monsters were fixed away. Compelled to become weapons of battle for their separate shinobi towns, we attempt to split away and return to the place that is known for the spirits, just to be caught and strongly fixed away once more, to some degree in death. I will not need to experience this embarrassment any longer." Kurama snarls, presently with tears of dissatisfaction in his eyes. This has mellowed Mami Wada's unforgiving look a little. Knowing quite well the embarrassment and agony the 9 followed monsters needed to persevere throughout the previous 500 years. "While I really do feel for your predicament, extraordinary fox," she started saying, "letting your ongoing host, particularly a blameless kid that never at any point knew about your misery, endure herself through individuals' remorselessness is not any justification. You ought to have connected with her." She chastised the evil spirit, her look solidifying again. However, again the evil spirit recently heaved and dismissed. "Regardless of whether I had needed to do that, the Ryu Paradise's revile seal on her stomach totally isolates cognizance from each other. I was unable to reach her, not even to voice my complaints over the style of her mindscape. She's just here right now since she's so near death. It debilitates that piece of the seal," he tells in an exhausted tone. Mami Wada could shake her head in dissatisfaction at the fox's disregard. When he was a fledgling, he was something sweet, thus mindful of his kin's necessities. And presently maybe the opportunity has arrived to take care of business and send him and his kin back to the soul world. She will account for herself to Ruler Damballa later, gazing toward the exposed doors that holds the monster in line. She lifted her water-blue gleaming hand at the seal and terminated an energy shaft at it, breaking the seal, yet, rather than opening like the Loa anticipated that they should, the entryways stay close and presently enveloped by sparkling white chains that showed up out of the blue, and a man with brilliant hair seems himself before the going after goddess. "What do you assume you are doing?" The man requests of the goddess with outrage in his voice. Yet, it didn't irritate Mami, whose greenish-blue eyes solidified considerably more at seeing the man. "Extend her regard, fool. This is Mami Wada, goddess of recuperating and fruitfulness, carrier of bits of insight and replies to those fortunate or stupid enough to look into her heavenly mirror." Kurama unexpectedly said with love. He might be irritated and tired of everything on this planet and needs to end it no holds barred. Yet his feeling of regard for a higher power was still there. The blondie man, wearing a long white coat over his shinobi outfit, folded his arms over his chest as he restricted his blue eyes upon the goddess before him, then went to the fox. "I couldn't care less on the off chance that she is Kami herself. The Loa have no business with the secret leaf undertakings. The main issue she or any Loa ought to be stressing over is the place that is known for swamp and its own covered up, so shut up, fox." He snarls out at him, yet that mane makes the fox considerably more annoyed. "And oh, you shut up, Minato Namikaze," Kurama's voice blast. "You have no say over the goddess of old or me. You are only a chakra memory of a jerk that has never held any regard for anybody. Simply a man who coved power and will forfeit his own better half and girl to get it," he charged, causing Mami Wada's eyes to limit sense. She had close to zero insight into that little detail. Minato squints his eyes at the fox considerably more. "Kushina had the right to kick the bucket for going behind my back with that Amazing bois jerk, and our little weapons there isn't my girl. It's his. He let out. Loa's eyes were presently essentially as extensive as saucers, with her hands grasping hard into clench hands. You involved the offspring of an old goddess, a host to a followed monster? She shouts at the man in dismay. Minato's limited look widened briefly at the acknowledgement that he just let the cat out of the bag before one of them. However, at that point they float back towards the Loa, unforgiving once more. Yes, I did, he says with a combination of dread and pride in his voice. Being a demigoddess with a body a lot more grounded than the typical human, she was the ideal host for that creature, and the ideal retribution against my ex and her sweetheart. Since she mends quicker than normal, the residents can have a go at her however many times as they need one day, and quite sooner too she's completely recuperated and prepared for one more round of torment, he said with happiness in his voice. Then, at that point, started to snicker like an insane individual getting away from the refuge. That is until an undetectable man grabbed hold of him and sent him running into the Cubi's jail door, sticking him there hard. The sight made the fox sneer and express gratitude toward Mami Wada for showing the charlatan his place. I'm not the one doing this, Kurama, the Loa said, stunning the fox. In the event that Mami Wada wasn't doing this, and he sure realizes he's not the one making it happen, then, at that point, who? Hearing hurling breath behind the Loa, both she and Kurama hoped to see the wellspring of Minato's ongoing dilemma. An exceptionally irritated-looking Nariana, her right hand raised and gleaming an emerald green, alongside her hazardously restricted eyes. You bastard! She snarls out as she gradually shuts her hand into a clench hand, expanding the power's tension around Minato's body. Nara, Nalu, let go of FFF, me, a. Minato wheezes out between tormented, shallow breaths. In any case, the young lady's new emerald eyes just gleamed considerably more splendid as her fury expanded. You reviled me to an existence of wretchedness and agony in my own home, on the grounds that my mom cherished another person. A knave as you don't merit love or a family. A charlatan like you ought to be consuming in the most profound pits of misery. The demigoddess shouted out to the chakra memory of the jerk she accepted to be her dad briefly while she was blustering. Nariana's body kept on going through additional actual changes. Her fair hair developed longer and changed into a profound strawberry light rather than a daylight fair, with strands of emerald green hair blended into them. Her skin turned out to be a lot paler, with her bristle-like checks totally evaporating, and she's giving off an impression of being losing some weight. However, she didn't see anything of that. To zero in on extracting the life from the fair poop hole. What's more, in the event that I need to, I'll by toss you down that pit myself. Nariana snarls out at him as her emerald green understudies transform into cuts. In the meantime, Mami Wada took a gander at the kid before her, eyes enlarge at the kid who has quite recently showed her demigoddess powers, which conclusively conveyed great bois enchanted signature like she felt in the couple of different kids he had with mortal ladies. Yet not a single one of them had the degree of force this one conveyed. Dear kid, who are you really? She intellectually second-guesses herself as she watches on, not even once attempting to stop her. Why, bitch, snarls out Minato with another wheeze. Yet, Nariana took that affront in conflict while giving him a horrible sneer, her emerald green eyes sparkling considerably more brilliant. Stick and stones might break my bones, daddy. However, the words coming out that foul mouth of yours influences me comparably much as Kakashi teacher's admonitions to observe the rules during competing. Any final words before I send you to the Shinigami to be judged and afterward ass-kicked in damnation? She asked him in a lethal quiet tone, her grasp marginally slackening on the blonde's throat so he could talk. He hurls a wheeze, breathing vigorously, then sent a passing frown at Narena. I do, in the event that you believe somebody should fault for that crap of a day-to-day existence you got, sharp-edged that mother of yours. It's her problem for you in any event being conceived. He snarls out at the young lady with a dreadful grin out of nowhere showing up all over. Assuming I had lived and been permitted to raise you, I would have made you my courtesan. That is the main thing you would have been really great for alongside your mom, he said with a crazy giggle. Nariana catches at him. Garbage such as yourself is underneath me, very much like the Uchihas. She murmurs out as teeth glisten off the lights on the walls. That was the straw that broke the camel's back that crushed the jackass spirit, making Nariana catch at him while building up her hang on the man and heaving for breath once more. You wish, yet garbage such as yourself is underneath me, very much like the Uchihas, particularly that Team Sasuke, who's next on my rundown of vengeance, she murmurs out as recently procured teeth were uncovered so anyone might be able to see, showing up considerably more snake-like than previously. Those words left Minato gobsmacked. Nobody in all his years has at any point addressed him in such a way. Not even Jiraiya has at any point addressed him in such a way, and they had their portion of frightful battles about the years. In any case, before he could get a hold of himself and attempt to battle her hold once more, Nariana's hand at long last shut as far as possible, which expanded the enchanted strain so much that the chakra memory was in a real sense squashed into dust, making it disappear into nothingness without allowing him the opportunity to shout. Tumbling to her knees, Nariana half gasping, half wailed, depleting from utilizing her freshly discovered power like that unexpectedly early. Yet an extraordinary good feeling and happiness fell on her body too. The sense she figured out how to get back at one of her victimizers, and he won't be the only one soon enough, she thought with another frightening grin framing. In the meantime, Mami Wada moves her hands dependent upon her chest as her eyes broadened at the last showcase of force. However, at that point tumbled down and helped that Minato was long gone. The man was such a terrible piece of work that in the event that she hadn't obliterated him, she would have. She presently moved over towards the still stooped strawberry blonde. Great dear kid, you have vindicated yourself and your dad's honor presently kindly. Will you get with me once again to the place that is known for Bog, the place that is known for our kin? She asked her with a delicate grin as she expanded her hand towards the recently framed demigoddess. Yet again Nariana squinted a few times as she turned upward towards the Loa with tear tracks on her pudgy cheeks. You need a beast like me to return with you? She questions the goddess before her with a stammer as she attempts to retaliate, more tears taking steps to gush out. Yet again the goddess' heart breaks at the kid's words as she grimaces. You are in no way, shape, or form a beast, kid, she expressed not long before tenderly taking her face in her grasp. You are a demigoddess, the offspring of a heavenly being infinitely better to anything you know. You should be cherished and regarded, not dreaded and loathed. She wrapped up with a thoughtful grin. Hearing the goddess' words, a grin gradually framed all over as she happily acknowledged her outstretched hands. Thank you, she tells the goddess, who grinned at the youthful demigoddess. And I guarantee you, dear kid, one day you will meet your dad and the remainder of your heavenly family. Until that day, the town is concealed in the bog, and individuals of the trees will take you in and help you as well as could be expected. She guaranteed not long prior to giving her a kiss on her temple and telling her that the time had come to awaken, making the young lady vanish instantly of green light, back to the waking scene. When she was gone, Kurama, who's been overlooked this entire time, glanced back at Mami Wada. What now, Mommy? He questions the Loa still inside the young lady's mindscape. She admires the enormous fox behind the old, binded iron bars. Presently, my dear Kurama, will complete the process of liberating you obviously, she said happily prior to terminating another energy bar, presently at the chains which hold the banished entryways shut, splitting them up, lastly permitting the ways to open. The devil fox gradually got out of his jail, a veritable blissful grin gradually framing on his throat, as Mommy Wada reflected, until the fox totally ventured out and she could feel something was not exactly right. Something was absent from the fox himself. "Kurama, my dear fox, might you at some point, if it's not too much trouble, explain to me why I just feel yang chakra coming from you?" She questions him as her greenish-blue eyes looks profound into his own blood-red eyes. He turned away from her as a solitary tear moved down his shaggy cheek. That jerk split me in half when he saw that Narayana didn't seem as though him and sorted out Kushina was going behind his back with another man. At first Kushina had wanted to seal me inside her girl, as she didn't know whether she would endure the cut injury to her mid-region, having lost a lot of blood when she had the option to catch me. He answers her truly, her eyes augmented again with shock at hearing this. "If it's not too much trouble, go on," she tells him as she battles to hold herself back from detonating and going to damnation herself to shred that jerk's spirit to pieces. At the point when he saw the young lady, he went after his significant other, calling her a prostitute and whore. It deteriorated her wounds and killed her. Then, at that point, he went through some hand seals and called upon the Shigami, making an arrangement with the old passing god, his spirit for me fixed in Narayana. However, he attempted to deceive the god via fixing my ing half inside himself, subsequently giving his life force a sufficient lift to endure the fixing. Yet I figured out how to lethally harm him with one of my tails through his chest, and presently my ing half will be stuck forever inside that charlatan spirit. Kurama tells her with a fury-filled thunder, "My dear Kurama, that will not do. I must request that you stay inside Narayana's mindscape for some time longer while I go recover your Ina portion of." The Loa tells him with a delicate grin all over, "Yet, how? You are not a passing Loa." Kurama brings up to the Loa remaining before him. In any case, her grin won't ever falter. "No, however Daddy helps me out, so after I'm certain little Narayana is securely in swamp, I'm going to gather on that blessing," she tells him before she and her snakes evaporate in the water. Haku's honey earthy colored eyes solidify as she frowns at the frantic kid, who is simply sneering at her and snickering at seeing his partner's compulsing body laying between them. "You fucking jerk," she shouted at him in rage. "How might you venture to do this to a colleague who believed you? You ought to be the one on the ground having seizures and passing on horrendously. I had made this toxic substance particularly for you," Haku thundered prior to jumping at him with her ice kunai, prepared to slit at his jugular. Yet he figured out how to obstruct the blow with his own kunai and grunted at her. Why sob for a failure like her? She filled her need. He ridicules her with a bigger smile all over while his kunai is as yet locked with her. However, that and his self-image was blinding him so much, he didn't see the drifting ice senbon made of extra frozen poison behind and around him, prepared to strike. Be that as it may, concealed by the two, a delicate emerald green light was gradually starting to rise, the shine beginning at the tips of the little kid's feet, crawling up her legs and her toes gradually jerking where the sparkle had started. "I will kill you," Haku lets him know in a lethal quiet voice while pushing on the kunai hold. "Like you would try and have the option to," Sasuke tells her in a provoking tone while pushing back. "Goodness, I will, you fucking little duck-ass young man. I had the advantage in our fight before you took the out and involved this unfortunate young lady as your safeguard. I actually do now." Haku tells him as ice destroys slip her veiled cheeks while the frosty harmed senbons were jerking in the air, as though tingling to puncture the charlatan's skin. However, before either Neem could take action on the other, a pant is heard digging out from a deficit the two as a radiant emerald sparkle comes from despite Haku's good faith. Haku's eyes enlarge as she gradually goes to see the young lady she has been battling for, wheezing for breath while dark and ruby veins beat under the radiance of her body, with a blood-red dark muck overflowing from her mouth as she flips herself over, hurling the toxin that has been flowing through her veins. "Narayana?" Haku murmurs as the shower of ice needles around the faint-hearted Uchiha dropped and softened on the ground from the shock of seeing the blondie still alive and cleansing herself of the toxin. Concerning Sasuke, his eyes augmented with frightfulness and fierceness at the thing reawakening. "What in the world?" he inquiries without holding back, not mindful assuming anybody heard him. "It's unthinkable, unimaginable. You ought to be dead, not reawakening and vomiting your heart out," he said prior to splitting away from the kunai keep and made a few strides down, needing to move away from the unnatural thing that is stooped over, as yet hurling dark red ooze. Hearing Sasuke's shouts about Nariana actually being alive, Kakashi's heart stops only for that second, and the second after the fact he felt his heart at last reawakening at the news that his master's little girl is alive, that he didn't bomb them. "Try not to remove your eyes from me, copycat," Zabuza shouts to Kakashi, moving the man back to the rebel ninja's consideration. However, at that point his single ruby eye started turning to life, changing into something that ought not be workable for one that doesn't have Uchiha blood in his veins. "Unfortunately, I have somebody more significant than you to stress over." Without another word, he evaporated into some sort of whirling gateway that sucked him in like a dark opening prior to shutting, just to resume right close to Nariana and dump him there. A thunder of fuzzy could be heard from where Kakashi had once been battling Zabuza, presumably the maverick being stopped irritated at his rival dishing him. Yet Kakashi couldn't have cared less or even tried to turn upward from his spot as he bowed down close to Nariana, putting his right hand on her back as she regurgitated the remainder of the toxin from her body. "Shoo, Nariana. You'll be okay." He has a go at relieving her. "Master." Nariana heaves out between breaths as she gradually lifts her head to gaze toward the silver hair man stooped down close to her. What are you doing here?" she questions him, actually panting for air and confounded at the man's abruptly focusing on her prosperity. "I was stressed over you. I would have come when I heard you shouting, yet Zabuza was difficult to shake off," Kakashi confessed to her timidly as he turned away from her, unfit to visually engage with his young understudy. His culpability at long last having gotten on to him at the way that to her, like the others, he was a poor master. He scarcely at any point showed her or Sakura anything exclusively while showing Sasuke to an extreme, and doing excessively little to control his desire for power and vengeance. He was unable to try and show his understudies how to cooperate appropriately. He was such a disappointment. Kakashi's head then eats head up as applauding is heard coming from the edge of the scaffold. "Indeed, indeed. What do we have happening here?" came the nasally voice of the little savage who's assumed control over the island. "Gato," snarls out Nariana as she propels herself up upon her knees as her emerald green eyes gleamed with affronts the briefest of seconds. When she squinted her eyes upon the little man in his small matching suit, Kakashi looks at her out of the edge of his dim eye, seeing the short glimmer yet dismissing it as his creative mind due to being depleted from the general battle. He likewise moves into a squat position, prepared to go after at any second with his right hand moved to his back pocket to get a kunai. Behind them, Zabuza showed up in the fog, taking long, slow strides as he restricted his bruised eyes upon the man-baby that had employed him. "What are you doing here?" he snarls out as his own eyes streak blood red for the briefest of minutes. "Indeed, when it didn't seem my speculation wasn't getting it done as guaranteed, I employed a few less expensive hooligans to deal with the little shinobis as well as yourself. You are charging me excessively high for what you are giving, which isn't anything by any means." Gato tells him with a grunt. A profound, thundering snarl gets away from his throat. "You charlatan! You dare betray me?" he snarls out at the man-baby remaining across the extension from him. "Goodness, don't be so disturbed, Zabuza. You ought to have realized this plan to happen to you eventually." Gato tells him with a self-satisfied manner of speaking, yet again unexpectedly. A light green sparkle gradually started to encompass Nariana as she started ascending from the beginning, drifting on the spot, with her eyes gleaming too and transforming into snake cuts out of frustration. Something Kakashi conclusively saw this time and viewed the young lady in shock. Each town or port you have been to, you have killed or deceived each missing shinobi or legitimate shinobi you have at any point employed. Did you? She murmured out at him as her voice takes on an unnatural tone to it. Not wicked. However, not normal by any means either. Similar to the blend between a snake and a phantom. Behind everybody, Sasuke viewed the now drifting strawberry blonde with his eyes becoming wide with ghastliness. A voice profound inside his mind murmured to him with his sibling's voice. You won't ever develop further, younger sibling, you are useless. I ought to have killed you that evening with the others. The spooky voice of Itachi murmurs to the shaky kid, thus without the slightest hesitation, neither for his partners or his master. He retreated in fear like the wide range of various Uchihas did before him, running for their own day-to-day routines and not really focusing on the existences of others. In the interim, Sakura, who's actually watching Tazuna admirably well, lights up when she sees her sovereign come running out of the fog towards her. Sasuke-kun, she screeches at seeing him, yet all he did was push past her and Tazuna and ran past them, making her fall on her non-existent ass. Move the damnation, you dumb, pointless young lady. He cried as he kept running while Sakura cried at being pushed harshly, and Tazuna assisted her with getting up while sending the kid a menacing glare he totally overlooked. Be that as it may, before he could totally get off the half-completed span and to more secure grounds, an ice reflect unexpectedly showed up before him, and a clenched hand emerged from it to punch him hard on the face, thumping him on the ground and to obviousness with a little stream of blood emerging from his wrecked nose. Not so quick, defeatist, you have a ton to pay for before you leave, Haku said subsequent to staying his head out of the mirror to take a gander at the kid's uncold body. Back with Nariana on the extension, snakes and tree plants started emerging from the close-by woods, contorting around the help support points so hard they would break in certain spots, and murmuring at Gato and his hooligans such a lot of they would step back or chance getting chomped by them. In the meantime, Nariana's sparkling green eyes settled upon Gato, with a dull grin that is unsuitable upon her honest face. You have brought upon yourself the fury of the Loa Gato. For your misdeeds, I will be your adjudicator and jury. Nariana talked in a creepy manner of speaking. Shouts could be heard from the hooligans as the plants contacted them and tied them up into place, that being the snake sign to assault and provide them with a robust portion of toxin. The people who were not killed by the plants at any rate. Kakashi makes a slight stride back at the sight before him. The young lady was looking much more like her mom as far as fury at the present time, and this new power she appeared to have resembled nothing he's consistently seen. Briefly, he even believed that the young lady has acquired a Kekii Genkai like the primary Hokage Mukuten, which could make sense of the plants, yet nothing he could imagine could make sense of the snakes. She could never have been prepared by Anko, and she positively could never have been in touch with Orochimaru, so how is she getting along it? Back with Gato, the man was lying on the ground in fear, observing the hooligans he carried with him being all killed by plants or being harmed to death by snakes. A dim laugh moves Gato back towards where the devilish strawberry blonde was drifting, with Zabuza currently remaining close to her with his arms across his chest and his wraps having tumbled from covering his face. His shark-like excited smile entirely noticeable as he watches the dread on the little crap's face. It seems the table has been turned, he told him, laughing dull. Then his dim eyes gazed upward towards Nariana. That young lady's power is amazing. On the off chance that I knew worse, I'd say she was truly from the secret bog town in Bog. Zabuza contemplated internally before his eyes moved once more, presently towards Kakashi, seeing the slight trepidation in the man's non-verbal communication. Dolt? He laughs out, happy to see even the unbelievable copycat Kakashi can be terrified. Before anybody realized what occurred, Gato started drifting in the air and was immediately brought to Nariana's face. Her right hand connected towards him as her nails developed longer, becoming emerald green hooks as her fingers gradually folded over his neck. Concerning you, my judgment that I passed is timeless expulsion from humankind. Gato, she tells him, laughing as her nails dive into his skin. As he pants, stifling in Nariana's firm grasp, a green smoke starts to fold over his entire body, gradually transforming him into a structure that suits him better. After everything settled down, all that survived from the man-little child was a yellow/green, fat and slammy frog resting in Nariana's grasp. My unpleasant minimal pet, nobody will at any point break the spell that I had set upon you. Not so much as a koa. You will use the remainder of your now a lot more limited days as a frog, for nobody will at any point cherish a thing such as yourself, except if obviously they are a snake or bird that couldn't want anything more than to have you for supper. Nariana tells him with a dull snicker. However, the frog didn't mind much any longer, simply croaking at her prior to leaping off of her hand and thoughtlessly tracking down its direction towards the edge of the extension, dropping into the ocean underneath it. Indeed, that sure was fun, Zabuza said as he looked towards the unusual young lady gradually letting down upon the extension. My life has transformed from this day forward. Nobody shall at any point have the option to hurt me once more, and I will would what I like to do, Nariana said as she peered down at her hands, all the more exactly at the long green nails that had blood covering them, and gradually watched them turning around to ordinary. Great for you, kid. We want change in this kami-spurning world, Zabuza tells her with his arms crossed. Nariana gradually admires the missing shinobi remaining behind her, showing him no trepidation, and neither did he for her. Then, at that point, gradually once more, she investigates her shoulder, towards her master still somewhat groveling on the ground, yet additionally looking eased that it's finished and that she was all right. This made her grin briefly. Then she glared as she thought back up to the gauzed confronted man. I do concur, yet for genuine change to happen to me, I should abandon my town and go south, towards swamp country where extraordinary Mami Wada said, I'll track down a superior life. Yet first, she completes the process of telling him, similarly as an ice reflect showed up to their right side, and a now stirred Sasuke was brutally tossed out of it, trailed by Haku, who left it before it disappeared. Nariana glares, peering down at the little jerk, presently on the ground before her. I really want to deal with one more lost cause in time, she protests out as her slitted emerald green eyes turn frigid cold while peering down at Sasuke with scorn. The locals are correct. You are a beast, Sasuke tells her with an unstable voice bound with dread when he raises his head to see her. Frenzy and dread held inside his eyes as her eyes just reflect outrage and disillusionment, gradually attempts to slither away from her. Nariana shakes her head at the garbage on the floor, shudder like a scared mouse. She might a lot of want to take care of the snakes, yet that might really work out for him. No, she had one more thought as a main priority. Perhaps I'm a beast, however what you are is far more terrible. A murderous weakling with hallucinations of greatness combined with a feeling of inadequacy and an excess of pride in your family's legacy. Before I pass on, I'll have to cure it. I'll begin by eliminating these, she said prior to lifting her shining green hand to his face. Unexpectedly, a burning aggravation combined with a brutal pulling sensation was felt in his eyes, making him shout briefly before his eyes were supernaturally taken off from his attachments and squashed in the air so that everybody could see. My eyes, you bitch, how did you manage my eyes? Anguishing Sasuke shouted out while attempting to get up and find his eyes. I took them and I squashed them. Similar to I said, team, you put too much pride in your family's legacy, and it closes at this very moment with you. She then, at that point, lifted a gleaming hand once more, yet this chance to Sasuke's man parts. and immediately shut it into a clenched hand, causing one more singing agony to go through there and making Sasuke fall on the ground shouting and holding his parts. Kakashi then woke up from his trepidation-instigated daze and ran to Sasuke's side to see what was off base. "Nariana, what did you do to him?" he dryly and worriedly asked the young lady, who grinned. Somewhat otherworldly emasculation to safeguard he wouldn't give his most terrible qualities to his relatives, and to guarantee the Uchiha bloodline kicks the bucket with him and that psycho sibling of his, she said with no disgrace. Stunned and a piece upset now, Kakashi gradually moved his hands to shape some sort of jutsu to debilitate the fair. However, an emerald green air showed up around his hands and froze them ready, halting the jutsu. "I wouldn't actually consider having a go at something, master. The ass merited it for how he attempted to treat me, and merits no compassion from you or any other person." She lets him know prior to giving a decent supernatural push that sends him colliding with one of the scaffold support points horrendously. "Moreover, I don't plan to return with you. So help yourself out, teacher, and fail to remember you even knew me, and farewell," she said prior to strolling to the extension's edge. Her emerald green eyes peered downward on the ocean underneath her, with one last investigate her. She gave her off-track teacher one last grin as she made a stride off the scaffold, falling a couple 100 feet to what had all the earmarks of being her own demise into the ocean. "Nariana!" shouts Kakashi as he agonizingly drives himself off the ground and hurried to the brink, passing by his disabled yet shouting in torment male understudy. Yet didn't stop to help him this time, as there was nothing anybody can accomplish for him. The wounds he had experienced stamped both the finish of his shinobi vocation and any opportunities to at any point resuscitate his tribe. "No!" Kakashi cries as he arrives at the edge with perfect timing to see his young understudy's body vanishing in the waters underneath. Losing one more understudy, tears moved down his veiled cheeks as he fell back upon his butt. His hands raised to support his head as he at last snapped, losing himself to the occasions of the day, heck, the occasions of his life. The missing Kirinins, Group Kakashi short Sasuke, who's nursing his wounds back at Tezuna's place, and Tezuna himself were accumulated around a huge stone Zabuza cut off a rock at the foundation of the mountain. On it was cut the accompanying words, "Nariana Uzumaki, October 10th, 604 to May 5th, 617, the girl of one Kushina Uzumaki, the remainder of her tribe." Zabuza stooped down before the gravestone, then moved his right hand to a pocket on his right leg. He opens the pocket and takes out a little dark look over, a parchment he had taken from a shinobi from the place that is known for swamp a couple of years back. Haku remained there in conscious quietness and watched Zabuza as he unrolls the parchment. Then he moves his hands over it, centering chakra over the few seals as a few sorts of incense show up, as well as oils and what gave off an impression of being a few stones/gems. "Hi Kakashi." Zabuza welcomes the duplicate Nin, who is gradually strolling up the little way, prompting his understudy's last resting place without going to take a gander at him. "Here to offer your last appreciation?" he inquired, standing near him from his right. Sakura was holding Kakashi's flank vest firmly. Her enormous green eyes shot this way and that from the two men and concealed youth. "Great evening, Zabuza, and yes, I owe her that much." Kakashi welcomes back as he moves to the most distant right of Zabuza and stoops down, with Sakura sticking to this same pattern with a huge bunch of pink lilies and orange roses held inside her other hand. A few of the residents have likewise participated to offer their appreciation for Nariana, since she disposed of Gato for them. He tells the missing Nin while Sakura stretches out the bouquet to him. Zabuza snorts as he takes it and puts it on the grave, alongside myrrh, frankincense, benzoin, and winged serpent's blood. Then positioned white and blue sage into a shell pendant he draped upon the gravestone. Lastly, he set up of the gathering of precious stones made out of clear quartz, dark tourmaline, dark obsidian, dark jade, pyrite, and smithsonite in a circle around it. What are you doing?" Sakura delicately stammers out her inquiry to Zabuza, who checks out at her with a lethargic eye, setting up for a secret Bog-style memorial service. Turns out your colleague's family has ties in Bog Nation, perhaps to the secret Bog town, and since she loathed by your town enthusiastically and won't ever be able to see Bog or Marsh, I figured this is the nearest thing to encountering her other culture that she'll get. He clarified for the Pinkette. Presently this has Kakashi gazing at the rear of Zabuza's head. How might you realize something to that effect? He questions as his solitary eye gradually flickers with disarray. Zabuza turned his head towards the right, looking at the silver-haired man with dull disturbance. You really are dumbfounded, are you, copycat? What Blondie has done here yesterday is utilizing a bloodline from the place where there is swamp, a strong bloodline, one significantly more impressive than what that imp she had left blind before her passing had. The bloodline of Aloha. He snarls out at the man. What's the place that is known for Bog? Sakura questions the gauze man. I have never known about it, and what's Aloha? She wraps up as she looks back towards her teacher. The place that is known for Bog at one time had been a strong country with its own shinobi town, the town concealed in the bog, as strong as the place that is known for whirlpools, our tragically missing sister town. Concerning what Aloha is, the ninjas of the secret bog have a strict framework called voodoo that venerates nature spirits that marvels and safeguards swamp. Those are the Loa. The ninjas supplicate and cause contributions to them in return for letting them to get their power, which they use to make their own jutsus. Kakashi tells her as he reclines, shifting his head up towards the sky as he shuts his solitary eye.